Hi, this is Allison Sheridan of the NosillaCast podcast, hosted at podfeet.com, a technology geek podcast with an ever so slight Apple bias. Today is Sunday, April 27th, 2025, and this is show number 1042. Well, what a spectacular job did Bart and Jill and Alistair do last week. That was amazing. Last 2 weeks, I should say. Those three people did so much work. I can't believe how wonderful it was. And it just really made it possible for Steve and me to have a great time in Japan. And of course, Steve doing all the extra work to get the CES interviews ready for them weeks ahead of time was great as well. Anyway, I thank you all for just such a great time. Anyway, I will be doing a Tech in Japan article soon, but this week we actually have too much content for me to be able to get to it. The 20th anniversary of the NosillaCast is coming up on May 13th, and to commemorate this event, we've created 20th anniversary shirts. They're from Cotton Bureau, and if you choose one of the vintage blend ones, they're super yummy soft. There are other colors as well, though, that aren't vintage if you don't see what you like. I did put in a lot of color options, but if there's a color you wish was there and it's not, shoot me an email at allison@podfeet.com. Now, some colors just don't work right with the multicolored logo, but I'll check for you just in case. I hope you'll proudly wear these shirts so people will ask you, what the heck is the NosillaCast? You know, my favorite conference of the year is Macstock in Woodstock, Illinois, just outside of Chicago. It is such a great gathering of interesting people. The sessions are always fantastic, and the hallway discussions, I think, are actually even better. It's a very friendly conference where there's no, cliques. Everybody is approachable and fun. I'm bringing all of this up because if you register to attend using the coupon code PODFEET50, all in capital letters, you'll get $50 off the conference fee, and I'll get $25 too. The show is July 11 to 13, and I guarantee you'll meet other NosillaCastaways there too, like Marty Gensius and Joe from the Northwoods, and of course, Steve, and more. Head on over to macstockconferenceandexpo.com today, and I hope you'll come join us. In this week's Tidbit episode of Programming by Stealth, I'm actually not on the show. Bart Bouchard and Helma Linden start by reviewing how she took the reins of the XKPassWD project to first convert it from Perl to JavaScript and then to completely rewrite the web app. After that, she separated the JavaScript library from the web app code, which is kind of like gene splicing, really. This episode is primarily walking through exactly how she accomplished that split. And now XKPassWD is officially out of beta, and it's available at xkpasswd.net. You can find Helma's fabulous tutorial show notes and the audio podcast at pbs.bartificer.net, or of course, you should probably just subscribe to Programming by Stealth in your podcatcher of choice. Patrick Torby just ran me down in the hall and said, you have got to come see this. We're here to talk about a natural air purifier?
Exactly. Actually, an air purifier that you already have in your home right now. What you can do is turn your own houseplants into an air purifier with what we created here. So inside this sachet, it's hundreds of billions of air purifying bacteria. What you do, so you pour it inside this beaker. So this is the actual bacteria. Mix it with water here, and then pour it on the soil of your plants. And it will increase by 30 times the power of your plants to absorb VOCs, volatile organic compounds, formaldehyde, benzene, toluene, these nasty chemicals that makes the indoor air unhealthy.
So our plants already do this, but this is a multiplier?
Yes, exactly. The plants already do this, but at very, very low amounts. So maybe we can show you a little graph.
I love me a graph.
So this is the level of pollution, how it goes down with a normal plant. And if you add power drops, it goes down 30 times faster with this.
Do you have peer-reviewed papers about this?
So we're going through the peer review process right now. But to anticipate it, we've actually published, available, a white paper that explains everything about the technology.
Power Drops white paper.
Yeah.
From Neoplants.
Yeah. So we've shown all the raw results, all the data that we have coming out of our labs is expressed here. It's currently under peer review, and we just launched the product yesterday evening.
My goodness. So I'm sorry, but introducing this sounds a little bit like Botox, you know? I'm going to introduce some kind of weird thing into the system.
Yeah.
So adding bacteria in order to enhance the plants. Talk to me more about it.
Yes. So normal bacteria won't do so much of a good job. What we did is we found bacteria within nature that are able to grow in polluted environments.
Yes.
Then we changed its genetics over 6 years, and 20 scientists have worked on this to create this product. And once you pour it on the plant, it forms in symbiosis with the plant, meaning that it's healthy for the plant and the plant is healthy for with it. And we traced the pollution, so we can trace the molecule of formaldehyde or benzene to make sure that what's inside the bacteria, it only turns into healthy compounds, sugar, amino acids, and builds more bacteria. So it grows on the pollutants. The more polluted the air is, the more it will thrive.
So I didn't know that I had, formaldehyde in the air at my house.
Yeah.
Do I?
Yeah, you do. You have between 10 to 80 parts per billion. Parts per billion means it's a very, very low amount. But chronic exposure to these leads to a range of issues, from asthma symptoms, allergies, cancer over repeated exposure. It's always in the top 5 of the problems of the Environmental Protection Agency. Every year they publish what's the top 5 public problems. Indoor air pollution due to VOCs is always in the top 5.
Wow. I thought it was outdoor smog.
Outdoor problem is mostly about particulate matter.
Right.
Volatile organic compound comes from inside the house. It's from the paints that you put on the wall, from the furniture that you have. When you buy a piece of furniture, you have aldehydes that's put in the woods. Aldehydes react with light and temperature to form formaldehyde. So it's constantly emitted by everything you have in your home.
That is fascinating. That's a really good answer, I've got to say.
Thank you.
So if people want to learn more about Neoplants, where would they go?
They go on neoplants.com. And we just launched the product yesterday, so you can pre-order the product, and we start delivering on the 30th of January.
So this is simply a powder in a packet. What's your price point on this?
So it depends how much you want to buy, but it starts at $5 per sachet. And with $5, you have to re-inoculate the plants every month. So every month you pour it once on the plant, and you really turn it into an air purifier. You let biology do the rest.
Wow, that is fascinating. Thank you very much for running me down in the hall.
Thank you very much, guys.
Back when I was a user of Nanoleaf smart lighting products, I wanted to use one of their LED light strips on the back of my Apple Studio display as a backlight. The trouble was how to mount the strip effectively. It is designed to curve but not in the same plane as the lights. I'm sure it was possible to cleverly bend the corners, but I wanted a robust installation and one that was properly symmetrical too. I ended up installing a strip along the back of my desk. This was a great improvement to my lighting, so I stopped looking at the monitor situation. I later fell out of love with the Nanoleaf lights due to reliability issues, particularly with their bulbs, and Alison and other Nosilla castaways assured me the Philips Hue brand was the way to go for reliable smart lights. After getting some bulbs for my ceiling, I saw the light too. Sorry. Looking again at the issue of a monitor backlight, I soon discovered that the Hue range includes many types of light strips, so I set about understanding them all. This is a task not helped by the product names, so you'll need to pay close attention. I've chosen to explain the products in an order that makes it easy to explain the differences from one to the next. However, the first product I will mention is actually the newest in the range. Things may change at any time. The Hue Solo light strip is available in 3 meter, 5 meter, or 10 meter lengths. It's a flat strip quite similar to the Nanoleaf one that shines a single color of light from LEDs along its entire length. The covering is clear plastic, which means you can see the LEDs. It cannot be extended, but can be cut shorter at specifically marked points. It starts at $99 for the 3 meter version. The Lightstrip Plus comes in a 2 meter base length, and you can purchase optional 1 meter extensions to extend it up to a maximum length of 10 meters. It's cuttable too. In other respects, it's like the Hue Solo, a flat strip that shines a single color. The base strip is just $149.95 and the extensions cost $49.95 each. This was the original light strip product in the range. The light strip outdoor, as its name implies, is rated for outdoor use. It comes in 2 meter or 5 meter lengths and cannot be cut or extended. It has a thicker rectangular cross-section with a translucent material that hides the individual LEDs and helps diffuse the light more evenly. When not in use, this means it just looks like trim. Lightstrip Outdoor shines a single color and costs $214.95 for the 2 meter size. It comes with a suitable power supply as well as mounting clips. Now we get to the more interesting products and the more confusing product names. The Gradient light strip is the simplest of the multicolor range. It comes as a 2 meter base kit and 1 meter extensions are available with a maximum of 10 meters in total. While extendable, these are not cuttable, so your installation has to be an exact number of meters in length. These are flatter than the Lightstrip Outdoor, but do have a diffusing layer on them so you don't see the individual LEDs. The Gradient name describes what's different about this light strip. In the Philips Hue app, you can specify a single color, or you can specify 3 colors to create a smooth gradient. If I choose red, green, and blue, I get a beautiful rainbow from red at one end through orange, green, turquoise, then blue at the other end. There are 2 additional modes as well. In mirrored mode, the same gradient of colors radiates from the middle of the strip, so red in the middle, blue on both ends, each with the intervening colors. In scattered mode, you can pick up to 5 colors. Each LED in the strip lights up with the colors in order. On a 2 meter strip, a 5-color pattern is repeated 4 times, and then the strip ends on the same color it started with. All that's left to describe now are the Play Gradient light strips. These are where you need to pay really close attention to the names when purchasing. First, these are a different shape than the plain Gradient light strip. The back of the strip is a 90-degree angle of black plastic. Inside this angle is a curved white diffuser. In cross-section, they are a quarter circle. This is because they are designed to be placed on the back of screens and will shine their light both back from the screen and also out to the sides. Because of the shape and intended use, you also get special plastic guides. Where the other light strips are attached directly to a surface, with Play Gradient you attach the guides to the back of your screen and the strip snaps into them. Now the names. Play Gradient Light Strip 55-inch, Play Gradient Light Strip 65-inch, and Play Gradient Light Strip 75-inch and larger are all intended for use on televisions. The size given is the size of the television each is suited for, not the length of the strip. Play Gradient Light Strip for PC is intended for your PC monitor. Curiously, there aren't different model names, but there are 3 sizes. One for 24 to 27-inch monitors, one for 32 to 34-inch monitors, and one suitable for use on 3 24 to 27-inch monitors. This latter one is not 3 light strips, it is one sized to span across 3 separate monitors that are placed side by side and with additional brackets to properly support it. At this point, it's worth explaining how the Play Gradient light strips are arranged on the back of screens. The strip mounts completely on the back side of the screen, some distance in from the edge. It starts in one of the lower corners, goes up that side, across the top, and down the other side. It does not go across the bottom. None of the Gradient nor Play Gradient light strips are cuttable or extendable. They all have the same gradient, mirrored, and scattered modes as the basic Gradient strip. Prices for the Gradient and Play Gradient light strips are changing constantly. At the time of writing, the basic 2 meter Gradient light strip is $259.95. The smaller Play Gradient for PC is $179.97, and the Play Gradient for 75-inch and larger is $509.95. I initially kept my Nanoleaf strip on the back of my desk and purchased a Play Gradient for PC to suit my 27-inch Apple Studio display. Following the supplied instructions, installation was quite straightforward, though I would caution to measure twice, stick once. In addition to sticking the brackets to the screen, there is also a small power adapter that needs mounting next to the strip. This accepts a proprietary cord integral to the strip itself on one side and a standard DC power cord to the supplied power supply on the other. The DC cord is plenty long enough to reach the floor even from my standing desk at its raised height. In use, the light strip throws a bright but diffuse glow against the wall behind my monitor that makes sitting in front of my screen more comfortable. Usually I have it set to a bright white, as my wallpaper is a pale beige colour. Occasionally I give it some fun colours when the mood takes me. Not long after kitting out my monitor, I bought the regular gradient light strip and replaced the Nanoleaf one along the back of my desk. This actually does more good than the monitor one in my view, and this is for two reasons. First, it's not set back from the edge of anything, so I see much more of the light. Second, it runs the full 1.8 meters along the back of my desk, plus a little around each end, which is much more light than the approximately 0.8 meters on the back of my monitor. Because my study is something of a light trap, I also purchased a 2-meter Light Strip Plus and have mounted this at the top of the wall behind where I sit. This adds up to 1700 lumens of light to the room, which it sorely needs even though I have 3 1300 lumen hue bulbs on the ceiling. You might be asking yourself at this point why I didn't go for the Light Strip Plus on my desk. The answer is whimsy. I'm a sucker for pretty lights. While my gradient light strips are usually displaying some type of white light, sometimes I like to let my metaphorical hair down. I don't have enough to do it for real. I use the Hue app on my iPhone to do most of my light control. Occasionally I use Siri, but I also have an app on my Mac called Hue Sync, which is published by Philips. The reason the screen-based gradient light strips are branded with the name Play is because they know how to play. Using the Hue Sync app on Mac or PC, or an extra piece of hardware with your television, Hue lights can adapt to your entertainment, either what is on screen or, my favourite, music. I have a playlist on Apple Music called Light Show. It contains songs that I have found get a good response from my room full of Hue bulbs and light strips. As I write this, it is on shuffle. Old-time rock and roll has never been better.
Well, I've complained to Alistair that his series on Hue items is really starting to cost me money. I really think I need one of these light strips because I do have a, who makes it? I think it's a Hue light that's stuck on the back of my display, but it doesn't light it up, the wall up enough. So I think one of these light strips across the back of my desk, Steve, would be really cool to light up the wall. I don't need this, but it looks really neato and I want one. There are a lot of smart rings out right now, but we're in the booth of Lotus with Dhaval Patel to talk about a very different device that is a ring. Why don't you go take off and tell us what the problem we're trying to solve here?
Thank you, and very nice to meet everyone. My name is Dhaval Patel. I'm an electrical and aerospace engineer by training, previously managed a division at Apple, and founded Lotus to solve my own pain point because I was born with twisted knees and I didn't have a smart home myself, even though I'm an electrical engineer. So in a nutshell, for people with physical disabilities, we've made this wearable ring that controls objects at home by pointing. But unlike traditional smart home technology, there's no app, no rewiring, and no internet. You just point and click.
So he's given me one of these rings as well, and we saw a demo a little bit earlier. The ring has a line on it that has a light that lights up, but it's also got a button on the side. So that's an infrared light we're seeing?
That's right. So if I push the button, you'll notice a little red light that comes out. And it's just like your TV remote. So if you push the button, it's sending a little infrared signal and it's completely offline.
Now, both of us are pointing our fingers away from the lamp that's in the room, but I'm going to turn and point at the lamp and I'm going to press the button on the side and now it turned off. So that seems like magic to me because we've got no internet, no Bluetooth going on, there's no app. How is this working?
Well, essentially, it's using the same core technology like your TV remote. We've just honed it so it only turns on what you're pointing to and nothing else. So you'll notice when we were pointing to the camera, the lamp wasn't turning on and off when we were pushing the button, right? But when I push it here, you'll notice it turns on and off. Now, if you come closer, the way it works and the reason you don't need rewiring, and I'll let you go ahead and pull this off.
So we're looking at an outlet here that has a plastic box on it, and I'm going to pull on it, and it's magnetically connected, and it's got an IR sensor down at the bottom. And if I flip it over, we can see that there are little levers underneath.
That's right. So what you're looking at, there are two magnets. This is a regular wall switch. Because we're in a booth, it's down here, but usually you would see it in a wall, on your wall. It's a regular wall switch, and the same thing applies to the little toggle switches. The way this device works is it just has magnets. These two shiny silver things are magnets. And you'll notice when what it's doing is it's physically pushing your wall switch behind it. And so you don't need rewiring because you have magnets. And then once you snap it on, go ahead. If you turn it back, it'll just snap on and there's no rewiring.
So we've done a complete home installation just now by touching it onto there. So the magnets are grabbing hold of the screw heads, right?
That's right.
So as long as those screw heads are made of steel, we're good to go. That's all you need?
Actually, we found all screws everywhere all the time are made of metal, so they will always get attached via the magnets.
Well, I know you're an electrical engineer, so it does require it to have iron in it for that to work. But that is what they're made out of. So if I've got this ring on, I know you talked earlier about the way this can work across multiple homes and multiple people.
That's right. So in addition to being manually controllable, so if I push this button, you can manually control it as well. But the key you'll notice is your ring. So go ahead and turn it on and off. That's right. And my ring can also do the same thing. So if I use mine now, which means there is no programming involved. The nice benefit of this is your ring can continue to work in not only your home, but let's say if you visit your dad or granddad, your ring will continue to working in his home with his Lotus devices and vice versa, meaning any device can be controlled by any ring and any ring can control any device. So it's like a telephone. The more people that have it, the more beneficial your own device gets.
It also occurs to me that you could carry this with you in your hotel room, put it on the wall. Now, what kind of switches does it work with? This is one of the traditional toggle switches. What else does it work with?
That's right. So the idea was to have it not only be super simple to set up, meaning 2 seconds, but you can also take it with you. So for instance, we're here at CES. If you had a smart home, you couldn't bring it with you here, but we can bring this. In fact, we're using it upstairs in our hotel room. And to your other question, we actually use the two most common types of wall switches. You'll notice this is the same in the front, but in the back, it's for the toggled smaller switch. And this is just a prototype.
The old-fashioned switches.
That's right. That's right. And so you'll notice it's the same exact front. The front is a button, same exact function, it's just different back. So all you do is the same thing. Snap it on, point and click.
So talk to me about why this is good for accessibility. It seems like this would be good for pretty much everybody.
And that's our mission. Our mission is we build tech that anybody can use. We just optimize for disability first. So speaking of accessibility, the reason it's really good is it's the social model of disability. You can convert any space into an accessible space and be able to control it in seconds. And I do mean seconds. And in addition, you can take it with you so you can convert any space wherever you go in seconds as well. And so for me, the reason I built this is because I'm on crutches a lot, on and off. And I didn't even have a smart home because it requires rewiring your switches to connect to the internet, putting speakers everywhere to control the switches you just rewired, and then setting it all up with an app. And then you can't even take it with you. And so for me, when I'm traveling, it's a big problem. Even at home where I live, I didn't do any of that, even though I'm an electrical engineer. So the goal was to make any space accessible in seconds and make it portable.
This is fascinating. I really like this product, and I've never thought of anything like this. That's why there's people like you. So what's the cost on these?
So we start off with a starter kit, and what you're looking at here is the initial box. You'll actually notice you can open it with one hand. Even the box was made intentionally to be accessible. And so a starter kit comes with 1 ring and 3 switch covers. So you can at least start off with putting 1 in every room. And the starter kit is $349, meaning the same price point as one smart speaker with a display. But you end up with a smart home instead of one smart speaker. But if you're working with one of our partner organizations, like the federal government, meaning Veterans Affairs for injured soldiers, or state government like the state of New York, or any of a large number of disability organizations like the ALS Association, MS, CP, cerebral palsy, you actually get it for even cheaper. You get it only for $299.
So what is this device right here that I see?
Great question. So both of the devices that you just saw, the rings and the switch covers, are operated by a small battery. The nice thing is, it's only taking power for a short burst of time. So for instance, for just that small burst of time, it needs power. The rest of the time, it's not using power. So instead of charging it every day, like say an Apple Watch or your phone, you only need to charge this once in 6 months, the ring and the switch cover. So all you do at that point is once in 6 months, you can see these two contacts here. And you see the little gold pads on the bottom of the ring. All you do is drop it and it snaps on using magnets, and you just need to charge it for 45 minutes. And for the switch covers, they have USB-C on the bottom.
And then this is then you've got a USB-C cable to charge.
That's right.
The charge.
You can actually share the USB-C cable to charge this device or this device.
This is fantastic. So this is where would people go to find this product?
So you can get it at our website at getlotus.com. Lotus like the flower. So that's GETLOTUS.com, getlotus.com, or through any of our partner organizations.
Very good. Thank you so much, Dhaval. This was really interesting.
In 2001, I travelled to the United Kingdom for work. I remember taking my SLR camera and a VHS-C Handycam. I guess I would have had a cell phone too, but I don't recall using it. I know I had a single bulky power adapter from UK to New Zealand sockets. The next time I left New Zealand, it was for Australia in 2012. Australia has the same sockets as ours, so no adapters were needed. Only in 2019, 18 years after I last required an adapter, did I travel again outside of Australasia, this time to Singapore and Australia. Singapore uses the same socket type as the UK, and I still had that one adapter. But in those intervening years, I amassed a whole collection of gadgets that would need charging. Apple Watch, iPhone, iPad, MacBook Pro, DSLR, and probably more I'm not remembering. So began a series of attempts at finding the perfect solution for travel charging. I borrowed additional adapters from Mum, who frequently travelled in my wilderness years. I bought a multi-socket charger that included 2 main sockets and 2 USB sockets. I got by, but these were cumbersome and required some forethought when plugging things in. Not only which device to plug into which socket, but also when, as I did not have the capability to charge everything at once. I travelled again to Singapore in 2023, making do once more with an assortment of adapters and the multi-socket charger. Having travelled around New Zealand a bit over the last few years, I invested in some compact dual USB-C GAN chargers which are a decent solution, but of minimal value overseas, not least because they are 60mm deep. They don't fit in some hotel sockets with limited space. Early 2025 saw a new trip planned for later in the year to Singapore and Japan. Oh no, the same troubles again, and another country with a different socket type. I decided there had to be a better way. As luck would have it, I have recently been buying desk products from the company 12 South. I've separately reviewed the Curve Riser and the Bookmark and Bookmark Flex. As a result of these purchases, and with my permission, 12 South sends me occasional marketing emails. One of these included the PlugBug. As best I can tell, 12 South's PlugBug range dates back to 2013, when they released the PlugBug World. This converted a regular MacBook Pro charger into a World adaptable charger, while also adding an extra USB-A port for your iPhone or iPad. In 2018, they released the PlugBug Duo, which had 2 additional USB-A ports. The additional ports had a maximum of 12 watts of charging between them. In late 2024, 12 South reimagined the PlugBug. In a brand new design, there are now 4 models. PlugBug 50 watt and PlugBug 120 watt are 50 and 120 watt chargers for the US market. PlugBug Travel 50 watt and PlugBug Travel 120 watt are the same but world adaptable. This family is collectively known as PlugBug with Find My. Wait, did you catch that name? Yes, the new products come with built-in Apple Find My support. More on that in a bit. The differences between the models are amply described in the names. 2 have world socket support and 2 are US only. In each pair, there is a 50 watt model and a 120 watt model. This power difference also determines what you get to plug into the PlugBug. All models have only USB-C ports with power delivery. The 50 watt models have 2 ports and the 120 watt models have 4. I bought the PlugBug Travel 120 watt. My New Zealand local GAN chargers are 65 watts, but the 2 sockets are not equal. Each can deliver 65 watts if the other is not in use, but when both are in use, the upper one will go to 45 watts and the lower only to 20 watts. This is described on the device in tiny grey text. The ports on the PlugBugs carry no such restrictions. You plug your devices into whichever socket you want, and the PlugBug will negotiate the power requirements based on the device's state at that time. If you have a phone plugged in and it reaches 80% charge, the charging will slow down. PlugBug will sense this and make more power available to other sockets. If you have just a MacBook Pro plugged in, it can get the full 120 watts. If you plug in another device, the PlugBug will share the wattage according to device negotiation. It doesn't matter which socket you plug any device into. They can all be 120 watts in isolation, or they can be many combinations. On the back of the PlugBug, the output wattages are listed as 15, 27, 36, 45, 100, and 120 watts. On an FAQ on their website, they list other wattages including 20, 30, 50, and 70 watts. The tiny instruction book lists a bewildering array of specifications. It all depends on the devices plugged in, but you do not need to worry about where to plug them in. Any free socket is fine. The PlugBug Travel 120 watt weighs a significant 260 grams with the New Zealand adapter installed, and measures 104 by 60 by 30 millimeters. That 30 millimeter depth is important. Although you do need to add the depth of the power pins to get it into a socket, it does mean you're more likely to get it plugged in behind that hotel bed or side table. With the New Zealand or US adapter attached, you'll only need around 50 millimeters of space to get it in. The ports are all on the bottom, which means the depth is truly as much space as you'll need. My New Zealand only GAN chargers are 60 millimeters deep, and then the cords come out the front, meaning you require over 100 millimeters of space. The travel part of the name refers to the 6 different adapters which attach to the PlugBug. These slide easily into a slot on the unit, and tolerances are pretty tight, so the fit is solid. They're just as easy to remove by pressing in a small spring-loaded catch. 6 international adapters are supplied, although 2 of those are very similar to the others. The plugs are labelled for US, CN for China, EU, KR for Korea, UK, and AU for Australasia. The US and CN ones are very similar, as are the EU and KR ones. The adapters vary considerably in size from the KR and EU ones, which add 36 millimeters of depth including pins, to the US and CN ones, which add only 16 millimeters and have folding pins for when PlugBug is in your bag. A country compatibility chart on the 12 South site shows many countries against multiple adapters. In some cases, this is due to the similarity of the adapter design. In other cases, multiple socket types are present in those countries. The lists for US and CN are almost identical. In all, 179 countries from Albania to Zimbabwe are covered. El Salvador and St. Vincent apparently use all 6 types. On the back of the device there is a small cover under which goes a standard CR2032 battery. One is supplied already fitted but disabled. Next to this is a small flush button. These enable the Apple Find My functionality. A couple of simple steps on the device enabled me to add the PlugBug to Find My in very little time. I've not yet had the chance to use it internationally, but I have used it at home and it handles well. I plugged it into a cheap power strip I have mounted vertically on a wall, making the PlugBug body stick out sideways. The 60mm deep GAN chargers tend to pull themselves significantly out of the sockets, but the PlugBug sits snugly. Its weight does pull it slightly away on the top side, but because its centre of gravity is close to the socket, it does not feel at all insecure. The PlugBug comes in a sturdy travel case, but this is where I think they've missed the mark. It is a quality case, but it's far too large in my opinion. At 133mm square and 85mm tall, even with all 6 adapters loose in the case, there's a lot of spare room inside. You might not notice it in a suitcase, but in a carry-on bag, it's going to be noticeable. I guess you could justify by using that extra space for some cables. Then again, coiled cables can slip into the smallest of pockets in any bag. The PlugBug 50W models are somewhat smaller, at around 70% of the thickness and 80% in the other dimensions. It also weighs less than half and, as previously mentioned, has only 2 USB-C sockets. I'm not sure the 50W models make much sense in the modern age where we tend to have a proliferation of devices, but it's difficult to argue with the diminutive size of the smaller model. With a US folding plug, I'd say it wouldn't be out of place in a shirt pocket. You can purchase PlugBug with Find My from 12 South. The US-only 50W model is $69.99 and the 120W model is $119.99. The travel versions of each are just $10 more. While checking on some facts for this story, I came across a review that made an interesting point. The reviewer removed an AirTag from the bag that they now carry the PlugBug in. It won't help you find the bag if the PlugBug is in use in a wall socket, but it's an interesting consideration while traveling.
Dagnabbit, Alistair, that's another thing I need. That's a really cool wall plug. I like that idea. We do a lot of international travel, and it actually might have come in handy in Japan, but you're not going to know why until you hear me do my Tech in Japan article that I keep promising. I promise I really will get it done soon. Both of our kids have pools, and they've got pool cleaners, and they seem to kind of wander around by themselves and do some pool cleaning, but apparently WYBOT has a different solution, and I'm talking to Jose Valles.
Yeah, so we have different solutions overall, but we've been in the market for 20 years just doing pool cleaners. Now, 2 years ago, we introduced our own brand, which is WYBOT, but we have great solutions that we're introducing in the CES now. One of the solutions is here, which is a self-docking charging inside the water robot, charged by a solar panel.
Oh, hang on. I'm looking at a video here, and it doesn't appear to have any kind of a cable or hose.
Correct. They're all battery operated, self-contained. And the good thing is that they charge inside the pool, go out and clean, and when they need more battery, they come back and recharge. And that's all by a solar panel.
So it's like an indoor vacuum that goes off and it charges?
Basically, you call it right. It's like the Roomba of the pool cleanings.
So where does all the junk it picks up, all the leaves and bees and stuff?
So in this model, it stays in the robot in the back. You open a compartment in the back and pull the filter and you clean it. But let me move you to that side, and you're going to see the robot that has similar features, but now all the dirt inside the robot, itself empty itself outside of the pool.
So he's got this. You said this is solar powered.
Yeah.
So I've got my hand on a solar panel up here, and you're saying it self-docks into this and empties its own bin.
That is correct.
And recharges itself.
That is correct.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
The one thing I hate about being in the kids' pools is that big cable and hose. And I mean,
yes.
we make a game of it. We make it into a monster as one does, but I'd really prefer not to swim around.
Sure. And that's what we did. We started with the robots with batteries in 2018, and we were the first one to introduce one, but that's part of history because cables are no longer a part of the robot pool cleaning solutions.
Should not be a thing.
Yeah.
So this is called the WYBOT S3. And is this available yet?
It will be available in Q2, and the price point is about $3,000.
All right. Well, this is fantastic. And if they wanted to learn more about this, they would go to
The www.wybotpool.com.
WYBOTpool.com, and that's WYBOT pool.com. Very good. Thank you very much, Jose.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your time.
Well, we have a hero of the week, and it's Thomas Lebens. He went to podfeet.com/donate and used the Buy Me a Coffee tool to choose a number of $5 coffees that show the value he feels he's been getting from the content we produce here. I know, it doesn't feel like I do any of the production, but I will be getting back to it soon. While I certainly appreciate the money to help fund the work, it means even more to me just to know, he's out there learning from the show and maybe giggling from time to time at how I deliver the information. Thank you so much, Thomas. I really appreciate your support. Well, it's that time of the week again. It's time for Security Bits with Bart Bouchard, and the band is back together. You don't have to do it solo, Bart.
Yay! That is so nice, especially for the topics we have today, to be honest, because it's only been a week since I did the news, and it's not been no news, but on the whole, it's much less news than last time. So we actually get to do some deep diving, and it's one I'm really happy to do with you. Because I put it off.
Listening to the show, it was fantastic, of course. But there were so many times I was going, yeah, but Bart, what do you mean by that? And I wanted to ask,
I know. If I could, I knew you would be. The problem is I didn't know when.
Right, exactly. All right, well, let's get stuck in. We have a fun topic. I'm really excited about this.
Yeah, so our very first topic is in fact a deep dive, and it comes from the Podfeet Slack over at podfeet.com/Slack. We have a recent Slack participant, Mild Demons, who posted a question I thought was worth taking here. So what he wrote was, I am wondering if you know and can tell us what the security community is up to in regards to quantum computing breaking the encryption that we have now. I just thought about this as Microsoft has a quantum computing chip, and I was just wondering the above. So it's like, cool. Now, before I even had a chance to reply, NosillaCast Callum B jumped in with the most salient part of the answer, which is that NIST has released the first 3 post-quantum algorithms last summer, but Mild Demons insisted he'd like to hear the two of us have a chat anyway, so yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, that sounds like fun.
We should also say, for everyone who's going to fast forward, the TLDR is basically that quantum computing is not going to destroy all of cryptography. But
we saw it coming.
When we figure it out, yeah, exactly. This is a train that we're well aware of. It will break a subset of our current algorithms, including some of the ones we're particularly fond of using, the asymmetric ones in particular. But we've known this, so it's not a surprise, and we've been preparing for it very well, actually. So we already have the algorithms. They've been rigorously tested, and they've been approved by the standards bodies. And a controlled transition is actually well underway. So we're already not halfway, but we're well underway of actually implementing the changes. And what we need to do to secure our most critical systems is really just a matter of rolling it out. And I'm sure there'll be some bumps in the road, and there will be some laggards, right? Some apps and so forth that never quite get around to it. But there's absolutely no reason to expect a calamity. So, fire extinguisher out.
So when I was reading your notes, and I did learn a lot from this, and I'm looking forward to it. When I was reading your notes, I thought about the fact that we've had to up the algorithms over time before, right? We're at AES 256 or whatever right now. Well, we didn't used to be at 256, and when those new algorithms go into place, not everybody updates, and there are edge case problems, but that's going to happen again. It happened in the past, and I bet it's going to happen in the future.
Yeah, it seems a good bet. Yeah, it definitely seems like a good bet. I guess there's a subtle difference that what we've had to do in the past is update the scale of our existing algorithms. So from 64-bit to 128-bit
Not invent a
to
whole new science.
256. Yeah, not invent a whole new science. But then again, when SHA-1 became unsafe, we had to stop using one of our favorite algorithms altogether. So maybe we have been through this before. Maybe it is actually a good comparison.
Okay.
So I don't think you can talk about why quantum computers matter to encryption without understanding what quantum computers are, and I say understanding in the loosest possible way, because it's bloody hard. It's really bloody hard.
Wait till you hear my palate cleanser at the end. It's perfect segue into that.
Because, I have a joint honors degree, so 2 majors, in experimental physics and computer science. So you'd think I'd be the perfect person, but even I struggle with this. Mainly because I was a little bit too late in the computer science. The quantum computing was still too pie in the sky. But anyway.
No, it's because it can't be understood. That's why.
I'm going with that. Yeah, I'm going with that. So I think the biggest misunderstanding is that a quantum computer is a faster computer. So it doesn't do anything. The misunderstanding is that all it's doing is what we do already, but faster. But it's actually fundamentally different at the deepest possible level. So it doesn't do the same things faster. It does completely different things. And sometimes that ability to do completely different things overlaps with assumptions that we have used to base cryptography on. Because cryptography is always based on what is really hard. So what is really difficult to do? And if you have a whole other type of computing, it can accidentally make one of those assumptions invalid. And that's what's going on here.
Okay.
So I'm going to use a retronym. I think you're playing my segment on NIM words this week, right? Or is it next week?
Remember, I think it's next week.
Oh, well, then in the future, you're going to hear all about how cool retronyms are. But I'm going to invent one now. So we didn't used to need a second word for different types of computer because we only had computers. And now we have quantum computers. So what do I call the old ones?
Well, we had human computers.
So I'm going to call them
this
digital.
Will be our third kind of computer.
Correct. Yes, because it used to be the computer was a person, and then we called them electronic computers. And then the people went away and we stopped using electronic computers and they just became computers again. And now we have a new problem. Yeah, so I'm going to call them digital computers for what we have on our wrist, in our pocket, on our desk. They're digital computers.
Okay. And a retronym, it means what?
We need to add a new prefix to a word because we've invented something new.
Okay.
So we didn't have acoustic guitars before we had electric. They were just guitars.
Right.
Right. Okay. So to explain why a quantum computer is different, I'm actually going to start at the other end. What is it that a digital computer actually does? So digital computers represent life, the universe, and everything as sequences of bits, which are just ones and zeros. And every single thing our digital computers do is accomplished by nothing more than sequences of so-called Boolean operations on those bits. So Boolean operations are logical operations that work with true-false values, which we represent as 1 and 0, and they produce new true-false values. So and or are examples of Boolean operators, and the simplest of all is not. Not true is false, not false is true. Right, very straightforward. And Boolean, by the way, and my Irish pride is coming out here, Boolean is the so-called eponym, which is something named for a person. And George Boole was a scientist in the University of Cork in Ireland, and that's where he did his work on Boolean logic and Boolean algebra.
That's cool. You should
we
be
get to
proud
claim
of that.
him. Yeah. So an important feature of digital computers is that they are inherently parallelizable. So we don't apply Boolean operators to single bits in sequence. We work with groups of bits, which we call words. And so there's nothing complicated here, right? Think of a single Boolean operation as being like an old dirt track, one at a time. And what our modern computers are doing it a number at a time. So if you have 8 of them at a time, you basically have an 8-lane highway. And you're just doing exactly the same thing in parallel, 8, 16, 32, 64. And when you hear people talking about going from 32-bit architecture to 64-bit architecture, they're talking about doubling the lanes.
So the number of words?
So our modern CPUs, no, the size of the word. So there are 64 bits in the word for a modern A-series processor. And when I was a kid, there were 16 bits in my 386. And then we went up to 32 bits. For most of Windows' history, it was 32-bit computing. And now we're at 64-bit. So the word has gone from 8 to 16 to 32 to 64.
Okay. But a word is still a word.
A word is, we use the word word to describe our size of chunk.
Okay.
Right. So we are now on 64-bit chunks. So I'd like you to put a mental pin in how easy it is to parallelize normal computing. So digital computing. You just add another lane. It's exactly the same thing. You just copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste. I say just, right? It's hard work for Intel or TSMC, but conceptually it's not. It's trivial. So the illusion of the amazing power and complexity of our modern computers is purely coming from scale. We have literally billions of groups of 64 bits being altered billions of times every second on our wrists. And I'm being literal here. I'm not being hyperbolic. Giga is billion. Our modern Apple Watches are 64-bit processors running at a few gigahertz clock speed that store a few gigabytes of data. That is billions all the way down.
Wow. That's crazy to think about on our wrists.
Yeah.
I always like to see the comparisons
so the apparent,
of, what was on Apollo 11, right? Versus what's on our wrist.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, exactly. So the apparent complexity is what really catches most non-computer scientists by surprise, because I think it must be something really complicated going on, but we're just doing really simple things lots and lots and lots of times. So there are only 4 fundamental Boolean operations: the not, the and, the or, and the exclusive or the XOR. And in terms of science books and stuff, we make 2 more up. If you take a not and you combine it with an and, you get a NAND. And if you take a not and you combine it with an or, you get a NOR. And the NAND you probably heard a lot. How often I heard about NAND flash?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's because when it comes to physically making these things on pieces of actual silicon, the easiest one to make is the not and, the NAND.
Mm.
And a really fun thing is you can take NAND, and by taking no more than 3 of them, you can simulate every other one of the operators. So if you only knew how to make NAND hardware, which we call gates, you could do everything. And since NAND is the easiest to make, that's what we do. So our big silicon chips are just really complicated collections of trillions of NAND gates. That's all that's going on in there.
Okay.
Just lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of NAND gates. It's amazing. So one more thing I'd like you to put a mental pin in. Boolean logic is deterministic. That means that if you take the same 64 bits, shove them through an XOR gate, you will get the same 64 bits out the other end every single time. Over and over and over. There is one right answer to X or Y.
So it's
Always.
simple math.
It's really simple
okay.
math. Exactly. So that's digital computers. And I hope I haven't confused anyone here. It's very straightforward. We just do lots of it very quickly.
Okay.
So these quantum computers. So they do not work with Boolean logic at all. They don't use bits. they use qubits, which is spelled Qubits, but it's pronounced qubits. And I've only really heard it spoken on podcasts, so I misspelled it all throughout the show notes until I checked at the very end and then went back and corrected myself. So
Okay.
it's pronounced qubit.
It looks like Q-tip, but it's not.
Yeah.
That's probably
Yeah.
why.
So qubits don't encode specific values. They encode probability distributions of two-value quantum mechanical systems.
Mhm.
So not 1 or 0, but the probability of 1 or 0. So a qubit could be 75% likely to be a 1, or 62% likely to be a 1, or 98% likely
Isn't
to
it
be a
always
1,
50-50?
but it's never 1 or 0. Oh, it could be 50-50,
why isn't it
but that's
always
just one of its
50-50?
possible value. Well, because
Should I not ask?
that would be like saying, why isn't a bit always 1? Like, what you're representing is a probability range. That is the most finite piece of data in quantum mechanics. The smallest piece of information in quantum mechanics is a probability.
Okay, so it's not the roll of a
The
die.
smallest piece. It's not
Or
the roll
flip
of
of
a
a
die.
coin.
No, it's all possible rolls of a two-sided dice. All possible flips of a coin. And if the coin is weighted, it's not 50-50.
Oh, so the coin, okay, that's the difference.
Yeah, you can have weighted coins. And how weighted all the coins are is how you encode your problem. So you encode your problem as a bunch of really unfair coins. They go into a quantum operation, and a different number of really unfair coins come out the other side that are differently unfair. And you do that over and over and over again instead of these Boolean ands and ors.
So the unfairness of the coins is changing over time. So every time you run it, you're going to get
so
a different
you have one
answer?
set of unfairnesses. Well, it's not that it's changed over time. So if you're trying to do one bit of factorization, you represent the problem as a set of probabilities. You run them through the process, and the answer is going to be a new set of probabilities, which is interesting because it means that the answer from a quantum computer is never exact. It's probably. They can only ever answer questions in terms of probably.
Okay.
So that's why when you read research, they say that it's 5 kabillion times faster to an accuracy of 98%. It can never be 100. With a quantum computer, it can never get you the right answer every time. It can get you the right answer most of the time, or enough of the time, or it can tell you that this is probably the key. And if you try it, you might get into the encryption 98% of the time, and 2% of the time you won't. Or 2% of the time, it'll tell you that these two are factors of this big number, and you try it out and you go, no. When I actually multiply these together, they don't add up, they don't work out. It's probabilistic. It's not exact. It's every time you run it, you get a different answer, but the answer, it's like doing a real physics experiment. You don't actually get an exact value for the acceleration of gravity when you measure it in a lab. You get an answer and you have an error bar. Right? That's how it works when you're writing stuff down in physics class.
Okay, but
you know what it should be.
Yeah, but that's in measurement. That's not in what the answer really is.
Yeah, but the thing is, a quantum computer can only
Right.
give you that kind of an error bar answer. So you will know how close to right it is, but it will never be right.
By the way, I'm going to throw in something
and so
that
you're always interested in shrinking the error bar.
I'm going to throw in something that adds no value whatsoever. But every time you say qubit, I'm hearing the Bill Cosby skit for the people who are old enough, where he's talking about building Noah's Ark, and the instructions were in qubits, and he keeps going, "What's a qubit?" The joke still works.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you're like Egyptology, the qubit is how the pharaohs measured everything, which is why the Bible uses it for the Old Testament. So the pyramids were in qubits.
Anyway, I know that was no use, but I couldn't stop hearing it, so I had to say it. Okay.
I'm also listening to the History of Ancient Egypt podcast at the moment. So I have qubits on my mind in all angles.
All the way down. Okay, so we don't know the exact answer. We're just getting probabilities. I'm with you so far.
Yes. So that's one of the 2 pins I asked you to keep track of. So basically, classical computers are deterministic, quantum computers probabilistic.
Got it.
The other pin I asked you to keep in your head was parallelizability. And this is where the laws of quantum physics are not our friend. So with a classical computer, we just copy paste what we were doing on 1 lane into 2 lanes, 4 lanes, 8 lanes, 16 lanes, as many lanes as we like. In order to scale a quantum computer, you need to quantum entangle the qubits.
Okay.
This is what was literally called spooky action at a distance by Einstein. At a quantum mechanical level, you can tie multiple particles together so that they effectively become one superparticle, which means that instead of representing one probability, they now represent 2. And so in the real world, you need to be able to put more than a single qubit worth of information in, so you need to have more than one qubit working together. And in order to do that, you need to entangle more and more and more and more qubits.
Okay.
And that's really bloody hard.
And that's where we're making progress
because the
now,
universe,
but we're not there
Right.
yet.
Yeah, we're not there yet. If you think of the famous Schrodinger's cat, right, the idea is that when you don't observe the cat, it's in a box with a radioactive source with a 50-50 chance of decaying. And if it decays, it'll kill the cat. And if it doesn't decay, it won't kill the cat. So as long as you don't look in the box, the cat is both alive and dead. It's called a superposition state. Well, you need to keep all of your qubits in that state. And all it takes to knock them out is one excited electron being knocked loose by heat.
Okay.
Which is why you're cooling these things to all be cheeses.
Oh, okay.
Like, the real world is just constantly trying to knock quantum mechanical systems out of superposition. And you're desperately trying to keep them. Keep it in, keep it in, keep it in. Then I can do computing.
I'm guessing even if
and so you say, oh, look, I managed to hold it together for a few milliseconds. Therefore, we did some work.
I'm guessing even if you get it cold enough, every once in a while, the universe will just spit a neutrino at it to help out.
Oh, right, yeah. So you're never going to get a quantum computer running for 4 weeks. You're going to have to do a little bit of work, and then it's going to fall out of superposition. Then you do a little bit more work, and it's going to fall out. And so the question is, how fault tolerant can you make it that maybe you break it into little pieces, and as long as 3 of the pieces haven't fallen out, you're still good? But it's really bloody hard.
Okay.
That's why we haven't done it yet.
But they're getting there.
So that's why it's so
they're
bloody
inching
hard.
along.
Yeah. They are inching along. So that's as much as I'm going to go into here of what's going on. So let's assume that we figure it out. Mm-hmm. We have figured out how to build a quantum computer. It has at least, I think we want at least 32 qubits to be useful. We have one working. It's sitting on, let's say it's in a lab. It's probably not on our desk. Mm-hmm. It's probably quite big, but we have it. And so we can start doing stuff with it. What can it do? Well, its strengths are not in doing what we can do already. So the computers we have already are really good at sort of classical physics things. So modeling stuff you can represent with the equations that Newton discovered. So billiard balls on a snooker table, we can model those fantastically with our modern computers, and that lets us design airplanes and jet engines. It lets us do all sorts of cool modeling. It lets us process images, process sound, all of that deterministic stuff it's really good at. But our modern digital computers are actually they struggle a lot when you ask them to simulate quantum mechanical systems. Model the atom with a computer. It's not very good. It's really not very good at it. But a quantum computer is perfect because an atom is a quantum mechanical electron, or many quantum mechanical electrons, spinning around a quantum mechanical nucleus. That's its home turf. It'll be great at that. A lot of medicine is low-level quantum chemistry. Again, quantum computers can model quantum chemistry really well.
Oh, that's
cutting-edge DNA stuff gets down to that level. And engineering stuff. We're now running into a problem. We can't make our normal computers go faster and faster and faster and faster because they're now getting so small that single individual electrons are passing through those NAND gates, which means they're starting to become not deterministic. And that's not good.
Huh.
So a better understanding of quantum computers might help us make digital computers better, which is kind of weird. So realistically, you're not going to have a super cooled thing that can't get warm on your wrist or in your pocket or on your desk. But I do see a future where universities have a quantum computer that you book time on, like you used to book time on an old-fashioned digital computer, right? You'd submit your job and it'd happen overnight and you get the results in the morning. I could see that happening with a quantum computer in the university. I could see high-end research labs like NIST or something running a bunch of quantum computers that you could book time on. I could see the R&D department in Intel or TSMC getting great use out of a quantum computer. But they're not going to be replacing our iPhones, our Macs, and so forth, because they don't do the same thing.
It's the wrong tool.
So it's the wrong tool. It's a really cool tool, and I'm really looking forward to what we're going to do with them. But it's not going to do what my iPhone does, my Apple Watch does, or my Mac does, which is fine because I have iPhones and Macs and so forth, and they're cool.
By the way, this is one of the reasons that funding science research is important, right? We don't get there without funding science research.
Yes, because we ain't going to turn a profit from this for some time.
Right.
This is not at that level. So what does any of this have to do with cybersecurity? Why all the hubbub? Well, the answer is that one of the things that we do know we could do with quantum computers, because we have literally invented the algorithm, it's one of those things like Charles Babbage. He had theorized about computers, and one of his collaborators was Ada Lovelace, who is often called the first computer programmer. She wrote algorithms for what computers could do before Charles Babbage got around to inventing one.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
She designed programs with nothing to run them on.
Nice.
Which is amazing.
Forward thinking.
We have one of those. Shor's algorithm, we have figured it out. It is a mechanism to use quantum mechanics to solve the factorization problem. This is like in math. I give you a big number. You tell me what two prime numbers, when you multiply them together, produce that big number I gave you. It's a very difficult problem.
Okay, so
with quantum computing, we have a mechanism for solving it with a high probability in a small amount of time. Whereas with classical computers, it takes the age of the universe. Which is why we used it as the basis for cryptography. Because for cryptography, you need to have something that's easy to do in one direction. Multiplying two numbers is something computers are really good at. So it's easy to go from two small numbers to a big one. It's really hard to go from a big number to which two prime numbers made it up.
Now, this sort of invalidates what we were saying earlier, which was that the digital computers are good at one kind of thing and probabilistic computers will be good at doing something completely different. This is actually something that a digital computer can do. It's just really slow at it. But this probabilistic computer
so it's
can do
about
it
strengths,
more
right?
quickly.
So we can model the atom on a digital computer. It's just really inefficient.
Oh, okay. So it's not that it can't be done. It's just that's the wrong tool.
It's the wrong tool. I mean, my fourth year physics project was to model a very simple quantum system with one neutron and one proton and one electron.
Oh, wow.
And all I could do was approximate it, because that's all you can do when you're writing in C. Right. I hate C, by the way. Just saying.
I was so happy when I found that out
okay.
because I tried to start to learn it on my own before we started programming by stealth, and you said, no, don't start there.
Don't do that. No, it's barely disguised machine code, barely disguised assembly language. Barely. Right, anyway. So, because we have Shor's algorithm, a whole bunch of our cryptography is built on the assumption that it's really hard to factor big numbers. And when the day we have a workable quantum computer where we can make Shor's algorithm happen for real, all of that cryptography evaporates. Because it's based on the idea that you can't reverse it easily, and now you can.
Okay.
So that part of cryptography we have to have replaced before then. But it's not all of our algorithms. It's just the algorithms based on factorization.
Oh.
So what we need to do is develop new algorithms that have that the forward motion continues to be easy on digital computers. Like multiplying numbers is easy. We need similar things that are easy to do on the hardware we have now, but are difficult to do in reverse on both current digital computers and quantum computers.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Because going forward, we're not worried about it, but we can't be able to go back on either. We can't go backwards on either.
And
we have those algorithms.
But we have a good enough understanding of how quantum computing works to be able to back into what would make it very, very hard for quantum computing to solve, but still be easy. Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
So, like with the Ada Lovelace thing, we can program the quantum computers we don't have.
I like the way you use "we," by the way, throughout this. As though you and
Humanity.
me are working.
Yeah, I'm just going to take credit. Oh, yeah, totally, right? So we have now arrived. As of last summer, we are in a very comfortable place. So 5 years ago, I would have been saying, we're working hard on proving the algorithms we think will work. But we're better off than that. So since last summer, we have a standard, FIPS 203 by NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technologies in the United States. So it is a specific standard which defines 3 quantum-safe algorithms. So they exist. And not only do they exist, but since they were published last summer, the industry has already begun to roll them out. So I just put into a news search on Kagi, quantum-safe crypto, and just look for some news stories that would resonate with NosillaCastaways. And this is by no means an exhaustive list. This is just the first page of results, and I just cherry-picked out the stuff that seemed vaguely relevant.
So this is where
AWS...
So this is where they're rolling out quantum-safe algorithms into encryption already?
Yes.
Wow.
So all of these stories are quantum-safe crypto in use today.
Right.
Already.
We probably don't have time for you to walk through
AWS. Yeah, I'm just going to give you the brand names.
Okay.
AWS, Google Cloud, Microsoft, Cloudflare, Chrome, Signal, OpenSSH, iMessage.
Oh.
That's not
big
nothing.
names.
That's not big names. So we are on the right road. If magically Microsoft's new chip was better than even they think, and physicists think it's not as good as Microsoft say, but that's another discussion that I'm not going to weigh in on. If they made one tomorrow, we could scramble and deploy the stuff we already have today. It would be horrible to have to scramble like that, but we could. We're ready.
And when you say Microsoft's,
just got to roll it
when
out.
you say Microsoft's new chip, you don't mean their next Silver Lake or whatever. You mean something else.
No, they made news a few weeks ago, which is what triggered the question on Slack, that they had developed a new approach to quantum computers that they believe is going to bring it from a decade away to a few years away.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure that was clarified. We aren't just talking about the next...
Yes. Yeah, not the next Intel chip. Don't worry. So we're on the right road. Look, it'll be bumpy. A few things will go wrong. Some people, like some browser somewhere, will not update itself. People stuck on Windows 11 after it's been out of support for 5 years are going to be stuck on old crypto. We're going to have these edge cases. But there's no reason to fear a calamity.
I think that
we're on a good road.
We can also say with confidence that the real problems will be the mostly bags of water in front of the keyboards throughout quantum computing as well, where we're using password 123, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's like we're going to do the wrong thing as humans, no matter what technology isn't available.
And their other big job is to keep us from being allowed to do that with things like passkeys and all that. So it's probably a good time to announce that we're going to start doing quantum computing and programming by stealth, like in the next couple of weeks, right? That's next on our roadmap.
Oh, great. I look forward to finding who you found to teach that. I'll be a keen student.
Before we move on, because we are at the end of the segment, I'm going to jump in and just do my palate cleanser right here. There's a video of a professor, and I wish I knew who it was because nobody credits who the guy is, but he's a quantum mechanics professor, and I put a link to it, the most open link I could find. It's linked all over the internet, but it's a quantum mechanics professor explaining that no one understands intuitively how quantum mechanics works. And he says, the good news is that I'm going to be here to teach it to you. The bad news is you're not going to understand it when I'm done. But what is going to happen is right now I'm the only one who doesn't understand quantum mechanics. When we're done, none of you will be able to explain quantum mechanics. And he brings up the fact that Richard Feynman even said exactly that it's not possible to understand this intuitively. So, and that made me, I wish I had heard that when I took quantum mechanics in college. I know I've told the story before, but Steve and I took it together. A guy named Professor Van Hoven was teaching it to us. This is a fifth quarter of physics, and things had gotten real weird, and we didn't understand anything. And Steve said, you know what I think's happened? I think the Russians have infiltrated the United States school system into the university level, and they're teaching absolute gibberish to a whole generation of engineers to make our entire system collapse someday.
Love it. I have to say, the best thing my quantum mechanics professor did was start the course with a quote from Niels Bohr, who is one of the founders of quantum mechanics. And he said, if you think you understand quantum mechanics, you don't understand quantum mechanics. Okay, grand. Good. I don't think I understand that we're on the right path here.
Good. All right. Well, we better move on.
Okay. Yeah, one plain old action alert. If you have an Asus branded router and you have enabled their AI cloud feature, which apparently might be on by default, I'm not entirely sure what it's supposed to do, but it has the buzzword AI. Either way, if you have an Asus, patch, and then you're good, no matter how you have it configured.
Good.
Moving on to worthy warnings then. I have one of those stories that's difficult to talk about because there's not a good answer, but I think we should say it anyway. So there's an audience for this. It's people who aren't just using Gmail for themselves, but are using Google products for something more than that. So if you're a creator who is publishing to YouTube to make a living, you're in the target list. If you run a whatever the hell Google call their product for small businesses where you can have, like Google Gmail on your own domain, if you run that for your small business or whatever, you're on the target list. And this was brought to my attention by quite a few people because it scared them, because it's so believable. They all said the same thing. I think I'd have fallen for this.
Yeah, the first one was George from Tulsa.
Yeah, George gets a special hat tip because he's one of our people. And yeah, it's just one of those things. Like, I'm terrified because I would have fallen for this. So you are being targeted if you meet my criteria, and I can give you a takeaway. It's just not the easiest one.
Explain what it is.
So basically, the attackers managed to send phishing mails that looked very plausible because of two things. They used public Google services that most people wouldn't realize were not from Google themselves, which is sites.google.com. So the actual link led to something.sites.google.com, and anyone on planet Earth can create something at sites.google.com. And then the extra trick, just to really add the extra oomph, is that they found a way of tricking the Gmail with servers into digitally signing their fake email. So it seemed to actually come from Google.
And if you hovered over the link, it said google.com. And we always say, hover over the link, see if it's really from who it says it's from.
Yeah. Now, the caveat here, the takeaway that is universal is that if you are buying a service from someone, so if you're, like I say, one of these higher end users, then you need to understand what services offered by your chosen company are editable by the public. So sites.google.com is editable by the public, whereas google.com without anything in front of it isn't. If you're a Microsoft customer, sharepoint.microsoft.com is editable by anyone. OneDrive.microsoft.com, that one's a bit more obvious. So when you have these companies that sell services, just saying it ends in Microsoft.com or Google.com isn't enough. You have to look deeper and say, okay, but is this one of their services anyone on planet Earth can sign up to? And therefore, I can't trust this link.
But I don't understand why you're saying it's only creators and organization admins that have to be aware of that. If I get an email that's got this fake site, I'm vulnerable to it. I don't have to be an admin or anything.
You are, but you're not. You're right that you would be vulnerable to it, but you're not being targeted. You're of the list of things that are likely to actually hit you, you're lower down the list.
Can't it just take my credentials,
because-
pretend to be something that it isn't?
It could, but the attacks that are happening are very much targeted because they're abusing this feature where they can temporarily do digital signatures. Google have already said they're going to patch that. So that's being used, that's a high value thing. So they're using it against high value targets. So
they're not wasting it on a shotgun approach.
You're not wrong. Yeah, you're not wrong, but you're not in the line of fire. So I'm trying not to stress out Nosilla castaways needlessly.
Okay.
But I do want the relevant Nosilla castaways to be appropriately scared.
Okay. All right. What else we got?
And then we have another one of those annoying stories. So Blue Shield of California had an interesting data breach where they leaked details of 4.7 million members to Google. They weren't hacked. They misconfigured their Google Analytics, and they proactively sent Google sensitive information.
Who at Google?
Including...
Who at Google?
Well, Google Analytics. So they fed it into the brain of the ad engine. So they loaded the ad engine with your medical conditions.
Oh my gosh. Great.
Yeah. Misconfiguration. Don't install these things on, like, if you're not making your money off selling ads, you shouldn't be running this stuff. You shouldn't be connected to this ad-based mess. But they were. And they messed it up. And so they have made a public announcement that they did this. And they've told people to be careful that you might get very targeted ads. They've also warned that they accidentally included your account number. So hypothetically, if someone somehow got the information out of Google, they could spearfish you. But given that Google haven't had a data breach, that's very unlikely. The most likely thing is you're going to be getting terrifyingly accurate ads. Like, how the heck did Google know that I have blah-de-blah form of cancer? The answer is because Blue Shield told them.
I don't understand. My Blue Shield identifier is not my name. How would they know that was...
No, it's an account number.
Right, but how would they know that's me? Unless they lost the account names.
Because they included it.
You said it was only the numbers.
They sent in the analytics. No. So the analytics data has your email address, has all of that kind of stuff.
Okay, you didn't say that.
And your Blue Cross Blue Shield.
Much more specific. You said a Blue Shield identifier. I assume that was like an account number because you said account number. If it's my email address, now I get it.
Well, it is. Okay, so the scary bit is that it included that. It also included all the normal tracking stuff. So whatever cookies you had from Google that Google have already assembled, they now get to add your Blue Cross Blue Shield account number into the list of data they've built on you, and they've already figured out.
And Google has no way to scrape it back out?
No.
Or motivation?
Because they don't. Yes, and. So basically, I read through the article looking for the magic word saying, we have notified affected customers. I didn't find that. I found the opposite, which was Bleeping Computer saying, it appears Blue Cross have no intention of notifying affected customers.
I hope they get fined the daylights out of them.
I feel I should tell you.
That's horrible.
Yeah, that's what fines are for. Absolutely. Okay, that's icky stuff out of the way. I think we're pretty much all good from here, mostly. Okay, one of the most important pieces of news to happen in the last 1 week is that Blue Sky, who are very much the up-and-coming new social network, have added an extra mechanism for validating accounts. So from day one, Blue Sky have had a really cool feature where if you own a website, you can have that as your username. So if your Blue Sky username is nyt.com, you really are the New York Times. If your website is if your handle is at washingtonpost.com, you really are the Washington Post. I'm at bartb.ie because I really am Bart Bouchard, the owner of bartb.ie. So that's already really cool, and that's all they had until now. Now they've added old-fashioned Twitter-style validation, where they are proactively checking the identity of notable accounts and vouching for their authenticity. So before Elon started selling the blue ticks and they actually meant something, that's what's come to Blue Sky.
I see no reason that
And
Blue Sky
they've-
won't start doing the same exact thing, because now you have to prove you're cool enough. You have to be a newscaster or whatever. So it's a status thing again.
Oh, not really, because remember, anyone can do the domain validation. And what they've also done, which I think is really clever, is if you're an organization that has lots of people, they've delegated out the control. So all the journalists who work for a newspaper can be verified by the newspaper. And when you look on the account, it'll say that this person has been verified by this publication.
Okay. My understanding was that, like, if I was to do it with podfeed.com, I would have to change my user account and start over on Blue Sky.
No. You can just go in and change your handle, and your old handle redirects to your new handle. It's very easy to do.
I do love the way Bart thinks. His notes say domain validation remains the best option for regular folks. Have your website as your username. Regular folks in your world all have their own websites.
Well, he doesn't. It's 2025, right? Yeah, I know.
We're not in a bubble. I swear it.
Yeah, definitely not. Hey, we're talking to the NosillaCast guys. Right. WhatsApp have also added a nice new feature. It's called Advanced Chat Privacy. It's definitely no harm, but just remember that nothing WhatsApp do can stop someone taking a physical photograph of a message you send them. So they can make it really difficult to reshare this content. But it's just a barrier. It makes it difficult. Don't assume it's impossible.
Okay.
That's the only caveat I'll put on that. No harm in what they're doing. It looks quite good, actually, but it's not super, right? And then finally, in case you're wondering why I keep telling you to always be vigilant, we have another number that underlines why vigilance continues to be important. According to the Federal Bureau of Investigation in the United States, last year, so 2024, there were $16.6 billion with a B dollars lost to cybercrime.
Awesome.
That's a lot of real dollars.
Yeah.
So be vigilant. I also want to link to an excellent explainer, because this seemed way too brain dense to count as a palate cleanser.
Okay.
So Big Technology Podcast did a really fun episode where they tried to explain AI in less than an hour.
Okay.
They do a really bloody good job. So they explain tokens and pre-training and fine-tuning and reasoning. So the modern reasoning engines, that's pretty cutting-edge stuff. And it's 40 minutes.
No, I got to check that
And it's
out.
really approachable. Really good, actually. I was very impressed.
You keep talking. I'm subscribing now.
And then if you prefer... Excellent. If you prefer to read, I can recommend two long reads. They both come with the caveat that you're going to read 80% of them and then you're going to stop, because they're sponsored posts. So 80% of them do a really good job of explaining a real reality in modern cybersecurity. And the last 20% is a sales pitch for the product that's going to make everything better. Right? That doesn't matter to NosillaCast. You're not going to buy these products. But the descriptions of the problems that we're really facing in the real world are really good. So this is extra learning. If you're just curious what's going on in cybersecurity, these two articles are excellent. So initial access brokers are really important in how cyber criminals make money. And phishing detection, well, you probably noticed it's not working very well. And if you're wondering why our current system is not working very well, you'll get a real insight from the second of the two links. And now we get to cleanse palettes, and you've already done yours, and it was already really cool. So I get to do a visual one. And this is one for our PBS community especially. It is a Mastodon post. Programming by Stealth, yes. It is a Mastodon post of a DIY whoopsie. A door that very much doesn't fit. But above it is a little CSS statement. .door max-width 90% float : right. And it perfectly describes what we're looking at here.
Yeah, that was perfect nerd humor. I love it. That was great.
Yes. Yeah, I couldn't not share.
All right. Hey, Bart, this was such a fantastic description. I'm really glad that I have a chapter mark in the NosillaCast so I can point people to, if you want to understand whether we're going to be in a big fat mess with cybersecurity on because of quantum computing, Here's the great explanation from Bart Bouchard to tell us why. So I'm going to keep this as a separate link that we can point to.
Yay. Excellent. Right, and as the FBI have made clear, remember to stay patched so you stay secure.
Well, that's going to wind us up for this week. Did you know you can email me at allison@podfeed.com anytime you like? Maybe you want a different shirt color. You're going to send it to that email. If you have a question or a suggestion, just send it on over. I love to answer listener questions. Remember, everything good starts with podfeed.com. You can follow me on Mastodon, podfeed.com/Mastodon. If you want to listen to the podcast on YouTube, you can go to podfeed.com/YouTube. If you want to join the conversation, you can join our Slack community at podfeed.com/Slack, where you can talk to me and all of the other lovely Nosilla castaways, including Bart, and ask him questions that then turn out to be part of Security Bits. You never know. You can also support the show at podfeed.com/Patreon or with a one-time donation at podfeed.com/donate, just like Thomas did. He could use Apple Pay or any credit card there, or you could also go to podfeed.com/PayPal. A lot of different ways to donate money. And if you want to join in the fun of the live show, head on over to podfeed.com/live on Sunday nights at 5 p.m. Pacific time and join the friendly and enthusiastic Nosilla castaways. Thanks for listening and stay subscribed.